Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I just wanted to let you know we've got about a minute and a half. We're going to give it until some more folks are able to get in and join, and we'll be starting just shortly after 4 o'clock. Cool. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome this afternoon. I'm very excited to see so many familiar names and faces as we kick off the very first in our new series called Geography of Hope. So for those of you that I don't know, my name is Monica Shear, and I am the Director of Outreach here at Alaska Wilderness League, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. I have just a very few housekeeping items before we get started. We're going to have the opportunity to do a question and answer at the end of the program today. So please feel free at any point during the presentations to type any questions you may have into the chat box for those of you that are using Zoom, and then we will be sure to get to them at the end of the presentation. My colleague Lois Norgard is also going to be monitoring the chat so she can answer any questions you might have during the presentation. She's also going to be sharing some links in the chat box for some additional resources, such as the Gwich'in Steering Committee website, some articles, as well as some opportunities for you to engage with the League. Those links are also going to be included in an email that we send out to you tomorrow. So if you don't see them or you're not on a computer where you can access the chat box, don't worry. You will have access to all those resources in the email, as well as a recording of this presentation for you to watch in its entirety. And now I would like to turn it over to our Executive Director, Adam Colton, to welcome everyone and kick us off.
Thanks so much, Monica, and thanks to all of you for being with us today. You know, it's fitting that we're starting this Geography of Hope series with a focus on the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. It was just 3 days before President Dwight Eisenhower set aside the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in 1960 that Wal Stegner wrote his famous wilderness letter, arguing that wild places have value beyond recreation and are fundamental to what has helped shape our national character and identity. Stegner asserted that something will have gone out of us as a people if we let the remaining wilderness be destroyed, ultimately concluding that leaving vast expanses of the national world intact represents a kind of geography of hope. We at Alaska Wilderness League wanted to launch this special Geography of Hope series because at this very moment of challenge, crisis, hardship, and despair for so many, this can also be a time to be hopeful, to think about what kind of world we want to build together as we look beyond this pandemic and think about our recovery. Can we envision a society that sees itself not as separate and apart from the natural world, but deeply connected to it? Could this be a pivotal moment when we finally take action to address the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and forever safeguard some of the last remaining truly wild intact ecosystems left on the planet? We hope this series will offer each of you a chance to, at least virtually, experience some of these very landscapes in the far north of Alaska. We hope you'll be inspired by our speakers, who include award-winning filmmakers, authors, photographers, artists, and Indigenous leaders. We hope you'll leave with a greater sense of community, not only as part of Alaska Wilderness League's extended family, but as among a very special group of people who are committed to and passionate about ensuring that we never do let these remaining wildernesses be destroyed. Indeed, we hope you'll leave these virtual experiences reinvigorated to act in defense of wild Alaska, of the rights of its Indigenous peoples and the sanctity of their sacred lands, for the vast herds of free-roaming wildlife, and for what Alaska's landscapes represent, a true geography of hope. Thanks for being with us today. Thank you for all you have done to protect Alaska, to support Alaska Wilderness League and other nonprofits on the front lines of these fights. And thank you most of all for what you will do in the weeks, months, and years ahead for this important cause. Let me turn it now back to Monica, who's going to introduce our incredible speakers.
Thank you so much, Adam. That really does sum up a lot of what we're hoping to achieve with this series. And, I just want to say, as I look through and see 4 pages of friends and faces of supporters, and those of you that have been with us for so long, you are the ones that give us hope. But none more so than my dear friend and the executive director of the Gwich'in Steering Committee, Bernadette Dementif, who I'm so thrilled was able to join us today and kick us off about what her efforts and the efforts of the Gwich'in are doing, and how it played into the film that Kristin has made and is going to be talking about with us later. So Bernadette, welcome.
Sure, Bernadette Dementif, Gwich'in Nation. I just want to recognize that I'm on Dene Upper Tanana River, the traditional territories of the Upper Tanana Dene peoples. I'm in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I just want to, it's an honor to be sharing this space with so many of you. I'm not sure if you want me to share right now, or am I just introducing myself?
No, please share.
Oh, okay. So I know there's, many people are aware that this is about wilderness, but to me and to my people, this is more about our identity, about our food security, and about our way of life, which is all interconnected, right? As Indigenous people, as Gwich'in people, we have a spiritual and cultural connection to the Porcupine caribou herd. And we've had that since time immemorial. For over 40,000 years, we migrated alongside the Gwich'in, alongside the Porcupine caribou herd. And if you look at the Gwich'in communities and the caribou, they're identical. Our ancestors settled us on the migratory route so that we could continue to live and thrive off these animals. But because climate change has been impacting us so drastically, our, some of our communities are no longer getting the caribou, but that don't make us any less Gwich'in. For instance, where I'm from, Gwich'in, Fort Yukon, our people have to go all the way to the border to hunt, which that makes it more dangerous. It's so much further, and there's not 100% chance that we'll even get anything. This is not just about our food security, but our identity as Gwich'in people. All our songs, stories, and all our dances are directed to the Porcupine caribou herd. We don't worship them, but we hold them to such high regards. Our creation story tells us that there was a time we were able to communicate with them, and that we made a pact to take care of each other. And they have taken care of us for all these thousands of years. And now it is our turn to return that favor, to return that commitment, and that is to protect their calving and nursery grounds. Right now, we're not only struggling with this administration, but we're struggling with Alaska corporations. Now, these are known as Native corporations, but they're just corporations with Native in front of it. Don't make any difference. They're still desecrating our lands, and this is one of the last untouched ecosystems in the world, and it's in our home, and we have to protect it. We are not asking for anything. We're not asking for money, for oil, for jobs. We're simply asking to live and thrive off these animals and the land that has sustained us as a people all these years. And the survival of the caribou herd is the survival of the Gwich'in people. That is the important message that has been passed down from generation to generation. My ancestors, they fought hard. They survived some of the coldest, harshest winters so that I could be here. And that is why I take this fight so serious, because I owe that same dedication and respect to my future generations. It's really hard because we have BLM coming in. They left out many communities on their impact statement. They totally left out our Canadian Gwich'in, who also live off the caribou, and our voices are not being heard. Our concerns are not even being considered, and it's frustrating because we matter. We're real people with jobs. We're grandparents. I have 5 grandchildren, so another one on the way, and I worry about their future. I mean, I really do worry because I see the changes up here. I see the changes with my own eyes. Our lakes are drying up, our rivers are changing. We have dead birds falling out the sky, dead fish floating in our rivers and our lakes. It's it's frustrating that we even have to be fighting for our human rights this way in 2020. And so, it does mean a lot when we have people like Kristin and Jeremy coming all the way to Alaska, not just coming to get our story, but they come in and they connect with us and they make their own connection to these special places. And so, so it makes it that much more meaningful when we stand together. We can't do this without support. We can't do this without your help. And I just, on behalf of the Gwich'in Nation, I just want to say, Masit Choa, thank you very much to all of you for standing with us and for hearing our story, for sharing our story. Just because I'm here sharing my voice, it don't make my voice more important. There's over 8,000 Gwich'in on top of the thousands of Alaska Natives that do not want development. And so, when you guys take the time out, I know everybody could be out enjoying the beautiful day. It's beautiful up here. But you guys chose to listen to our story, and that's appreciated. So, Kristin, I wanted to say thank you also, for really taking the time to come to our people, to take the time out of your lives, both of you, not just to come and get our story, and you really connected with us, and I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. So fortunate that you were able to join us and share your incredibly powerful words with us today. Those of you that might have joined a few minutes late, I just wanted to let you know you will have the opportunity to ask questions. Please type them in the chat. I did see a few really quickly asking what you can do to help support Bernadette and the Gwich'in Steering Committee and their efforts. We are going to be sharing ways in which you can do that, both in links in the chat as well as in the follow-up email. And we're going to cover some of the successes that the coalition and being led by Bernadette have had with some of the banks. I'm sure most of you have seen the news about real progress and momentum that we're making here in the campaign in efforts to stop some of the efforts that the Trump administration is pushing forward. So we will provide all that information to you as well. And now, without further ado, I'm also very excited to introduce you to Kristin Gates, who, as Bernadette alluded to, is a videographer who uses film to tell important stories about environmental and human rights issues. She works with her partner, Jeremy LaZelle, and their work has centered around the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, as well as other locations under threat in Alaska, Canada, and around the world. Kristin has called Alaska home for the last 10 years and self-acclaimed spends more time outdoors than in, and has trekked across the width of the state through the Brooks Range, paddled the Yukon River from source to sea, and traveled hundreds of miles by dog team in the Arctic and subarctic. And so I'm just very thrilled that she is here to share her experiences between making the film and spending time in the many communities and learning so deeply about the people that are on the front lines of this issue. So thank you very much. And Kristin, I will turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. A huge thank you to the Alaska Wilderness League for having us all here this afternoon and bringing this community together. Thank you so much, Bernadette, for being here. You've been such a huge inspiration to me ever since I met you on your mother's birthday a number of years ago. And I thank you all for joining. I hope you're safe and that your families are healthy. And now I'm excited to begin this journey with you across the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Today, I'll be sharing some images and video that my partner, Jeremy LaZelle, and I have been working on. I'm going to start off by explaining how I became involved in the refuge and then move on to share to share a series of stories from expeditions that Jeremy and I went on to create media. So I thought I'd start off with a map to orient ourselves. And you can see the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is in the northeastern corner of the state. It's about the size of South Carolina. And the refuge, some of it is actually protected as wilderness, which is the highest protection land can receive. But it's the coastal plain that's been up for debate, and there's been an ongoing political controversy since the 1970s about whether or not the coastal plain should be open for development. So this is a picture of the porcupine caribou, a couple of the porcupine caribou, a fuzzy picture that I took about a decade ago. And I wanted to just step back for a minute and explain how I, a person who grew up in New York, how I became so passionate about the refuge. And my time in the Arctic began in 2011. I was hired as a river guide, even though I'd never been on a river in my entire life. It was okay though, I was given 2 hours of training before they had me guiding tours. But anyways, coming to Alaska, coming to the Arctic immediately had my jaw on the ground. I was so impressed with the immenseness of everything. I'm a long distance hiker. I started long distance hiking when I was 18, and I've been really lucky to see a lot of the wild places in the United States on foot. But coming up to the Brooks Range, it was a step above anything I'd ever experienced before. The land up there is so healthy because the Gwich'in, the Inupiat, they've been taking care of it since the beginning of time, and there's still a balance up there that we've lost in a lot of other places around the world. So a couple of years after moving to the Arctic, I decided to hike across the Brooks Range so that I could experience more of it. I went by myself, and here's a map of the route I took. It was about 1,000 miles, and there are no trails up there. So I had to map it out, and was mostly bushwhacking. But it was just amazing to travel across this country, and you'll notice that my route took me right across the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And one of the most powerful moments early on in the trip, I was crossing the refuge and I ran into the porcupine caribou herd migration. And it had been a late winter that year. There had been a lot of snow up north, so the caribou were still in the mountains in large numbers. And I'd come over these passes and there would be hundreds of caribou in the next valley. And I had lived in Alaska for a couple of years at this point, so I knew a little bit about the herd. I knew that they were 200,000 animals large, that their migration is the longest land mammal migration on Earth, and I knew that their calving grounds were in danger from development. But it had always seemed like a really far away issue, and I just hadn't thought about it very much. But then I saw their migration. And yeah, I'd just come over these passes into the next valley and there would be hundreds of caribou, and I was following these game trails that they had been wearing down for thousands and thousands of years, and it just felt like a miracle. So when I finished the traverse, everything felt the same, but the experience has continued to shape me in my life even years later. And to fast forward a little bit, I'm sure some of you remember that the end of 2017 was a really frightening time for the refuge. The tax bill was passed and it created a backdoor means for the oil and gas industry to start development in the refuge, and the Department of Interior began moving forward on an aggressive timeline to begin lease sales. And my partner, Jeremy LaZelle, and I, we wanted to do anything we could. We didn't want to just sit back and do nothing. We wanted to do anything we could to be useful to helping the work that's been going on to protect the refuge for decades, and we just wanted to assist any way we could. So we decided to go out on a series of expeditions up in the refuge to create media to give to organizations for free, organizations who are working really hard to defend this important place. We did make a documentary, which I'm going to be sharing a few clips from, but what we're most proud of is the behind the scenes work we've been doing with groups like the Gwich'in Steering Committee, the Alaska Wilderness League, groups who have been, doing this work for decades, and who have a much larger reach than we ever could, and who understand the law and politics behind all of this much better than I do. So we headed out with a goal of creating powerful media to help bring the refuge to you, because I just have to believe if anyone were to spend time with the Gwich'in Nation, if anyone were to spend time out on the land up there, that they would immediately see the value in protecting these really important places. So yeah, we hope our work helps bring the refuge to you. And to give Jeremy a little bit more of an introduction, we've known each other since 2014, and we've been working on film projects to advocate and bring awareness for environmental and human rights issues for a number of years now. Jeremy has written, produced, and directed projects for National Geographic, the Discovery Channel, and the History Channel. So next, I'm excited to share a clip of our work. We made this in partnership with the Gwich'in Steering Committee and the Sierra Club, and this was released when seismic testing was moving forward, and seismic testing with SA exploration was moving forward, and you may just recognize one of the amazing people in this clip.
They think that this is just an environmental issue, and it's not. It's a human rights issue. We are very much going to be affected in a very negative way if this drilling occurs. 95% of the Arctic is already open to oil and gas development. This is the remaining 5%, and this area is very sacred to us, and it's very delicate to the animals. It's just frustrating to see that it's 2018 and we're still dealing with genocide. We're still dealing with greed.
my people's culture and those elders, they're not for sale. My culture is not for sale, because I think this is much more than just 5% of the coast. This is 100% of my people.
All right, so as Bernadette explained, this isn't just an environmental issue, it is a human rights issue. And I'd recommend heading and visiting the Gwich'in Steering Committee's website. This image is from the Gwich'in Steering Committee, and it shows the homeland of the Gwich'in and the range of the porcupine caribou herd. And you can see that the two are aligned. And yeah, I'd encourage everyone to visit the Gwich'in Steering Committee's website and spend some time there. They've been doing really important work for decades, and they're always continuing to grow and doing amazing things. They've developed a youth council. So yeah, please visit their site and learn more. So Jeremy and we went on this series of expeditions in the refuge to produce this media, and I'll start by describing the first leg of our expedition. We headed just north of Arctic Village, and what we wanted to do for the first section of our time out on the land was spend time with the porcupine caribou herd. So we started at Arctic Village and joined the porcupine caribou herd migration and followed the animals as they were beginning to head north towards the coastal plain. And one of the biggest challenges we faced was the cold. It was maybe 20, 30 below at night, and everything just takes a little longer when it's cold out. We were melting snow for water. And so yeah, cooking dinner takes a little longer when you have to do that. Figuring out filming was another tricky challenge as well. We, of course, wanted as little gear to carry around as possible, but we also wanted to be able to produce professional quality media. So we couldn't leave everything at home and just head out there with our phones. But we did find a good balance, and batteries were a big challenge. We ended up just bringing a lot of batteries and charging them up beforehand, and then using them sparingly. And we'd have to warm them up with body heat before we put them in our cameras. And we did. The cold was nothing though. When we saw the porcupine caribou herd, we're lucky to see day after day these lines of caribou walking by, and it was just absolutely incredible. And at this time of year, the caribou were beginning their trek north to the coastal plains. Here's a little clip. And some barren ground caribou have declined more than 90% from historic averages, and wildlife biologists are becoming increasingly convinced that barren ground caribou are disappearing due to development. And the porcupine herd, it's one of the last herds that has this healthy population size, because right now their range is development free. And I'm going to share this clip from a woman who studies the caribou.
More and more, like at least from a scientific point of view, it's more and more proven that industrial development is a reason, at least, why the herds are not growing back. And this has been pretty well proven in all across Eurasia, like the big herds from Russia that used to be thriving. A lot of them are declining, and the main reason is not necessarily climate change, but mostly industrial development. And the same has happened in northern Quebec. Like, we are wondering, but it's very hard to do studies that prove that. But because the herds are always in fluctuation, but one of the reasons that is thought that has been causing, or at least maintaining, the once big herd at so low level is that now we have a new factor in is industrial development in northern Quebec. So that is opening a road, that is disturbing the calving grounds. So all the fact that the porcupine caribou herd is now growing doesn't mean that it protects it against the impact of industrial development.
So we spent about a month north of Arctic Village filming and got some wonderful footage there. And now I'm going to transition a little bit and start talking about the next leg of our expedition. We spent some time up near the Arctic coast by Prudhoe Bay, and we also spent some time in Kaktovik with our friend Robert Thompson, and I'm going to share a quick clip with him now.
I did get involved in this because of I want to keep it like it is for my future generations. I didn't realize when I got into it that it's more serious than just my interests here, that it could be a worldwide problem. Now I'm starting to realize that. It's not just me wanting to have an area to go hunting in. It's the world has to have an area to get food from. Everything we got comes from nature. The idea that this is so critical for the United States is without merit. In fact, if we burn oil for 200 more years, it's probably the end of the planet. All the climate change issues that we have right now are related to the burning of fossil fuel in the last 100 years. And so there's a movement now for alternative energy, and it's picking up. And I guess their hope now is that it will pick up to a degree where this oil from the Arctic Refuge, it's not even economically feasible to produce. And I think we're getting there.
All right, so yeah, the refuge is a complicated issue in the community of Kaktovik, where Robert's from has been treated unfairly in all of this, and I would encourage everyone to research that side of the issue and take time to learn about all the sides of the issue. So Alaska's Arctic is such a special place, and within the Arctic, the coastal plains are really important. Every year, 40,000 caribou are born here. The coastal plains are the thickest polar bear denning site in all of Alaska. And over 200 species of birds migrate here every year. From all over the country and all over the world. And now I'm going to share a clip of some of the birds we saw during our time up on the coast. All right, so after our time up on the Arctic coast, we headed over to the Northwestern Territories of Canada to visit Sigachik, where the Gwich'in gathering was occurring. And we spent a couple days there listening and learning so much. And this is an image of Kenneth Frank leading a ceremony at the Gwich'in gathering. And he just came out with a fantastic book. It's called The Man Who Became a Caribou, and I'd recommend checking that out. It's Gwich'in stories from Alaska and the Yukon Territory. So now we were all the way over in northern Canada and had to get back to Alaska. So I convinced Jeremy that it would be a great idea to paddle 500 miles from the Dempster Highway all the way back to the Yukon River on the Eagle River, the Bell River, and finally the Porcupine River. And it also allowed us to see more of the Gwich'in homeland and spend time in Old Crow and Fort Yukon. And we had been looking forward to this leg of the journey for months. We thought we'd just be able to sit back and relax and float down the river. And we did have a wonderful time. The weather was a little trickier than we anticipated. There were strong headwinds, so sometimes we had to just wait for the weather to improve so that we could continue traveling. But again, we were traveling through this perfect undisturbed landscape, and it was just incredible. And Jeremy's made a tribute to one of the animals that we saw the most during this leg of the trip, and I'll share that with you now. So after about a week of traveling down the Porcupine River, we made it to the village of Old Crow. And Old Crow's it's the only fly-in village in the Yukon Territory. And I'm going to share a clip with you. We were lucky to spend some time with our friend Chief Dana Tija Tram there. And Old Crow's doing some amazing work in sustainability. So we'll share that with you now.
Old Crow is a small fly-in village in northern Yukon. We're the only fly-in remote community in the Yukon Territory. We have a population of about 250, and we're placed along the migratory routes of the porcupine caribou herd, which was on the foresight of our elders, and when the community was finally settled from a nomadic people. This solar energy project is an incredible way to practice our traditions about living sustainably with our environment and not against it. So it's basically using newer technologies today to practice our oldest of traditions. The amount that we're going to be saving is like taking 140 cars off the streets. It's over 160 tons of carbon per year, and is really going to put us in more of control of self-determination, energy, security for our community, because renewable energies, at the end of the day, we're talking about sustainability, not just renewability. A solar energy project with the 2,000 panels that we will be putting up, they're going to talk a lot better than I will be able to as a representative of my community. Once those solar panels are converting photons to electrons on our grid, that's going to speak a lot, and it's going to speak to Canadians and to human beings, and it will talk about exactly how a small First Nations village fly-in over 80 miles north of the Arctic Circle is able to be on the cutting edge and going further in a direction that we all want to be going. So it communicates largely about where First Nations are headed. Our incredible contributions to this country is not just a part of the history, but very much a large part of its future. When you look to all of your lands and the development, how much are you willing to develop? How much are you willing to lose? How much more are you going to put on the table? You know, when I look towards the coast of Alaska and you see the last 5% of their coast slated for oil and gas development, when you see the mandate of a wilderness refuge suddenly carry the legal weight of having to produce oil and gas, it not only doesn't ring true to the documents that suffer, you know, the letters that are engraved in it, but what does it mean for the actual political systems that gave rise to it and the system in general? I really think that you're seeing a lot of democracy bending to the heavy winds of oil and gas industry in the storms of climate change. There are realities that exist and we're all a part of that go well beyond politics or well beyond borders. And I value over any form of conversation truth, and to have a meaningful one. And that's not one that you're seeing with the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The symbol and the potential of it, what do we really value? Is it these ecological reserves, these heartbeats that naturally drive ecosystems from beyond the written word and will be here far after us? Are we willing to sacrifice these for what, 10 years of oil, even if it's 20? What decisions are happening here? And how much do the people actually have a hand in what's going on here? Is a very interesting question beyond whatever details I can provide for you.
So after spending about a week in Old Crow, we continued down the Porcupine River, and the river takes you through these amazing canyons and then out to the Porcupine Flats. And we started to hit quite a bit of headwind, so we had to become nocturnal. And here are a few pictures of the Porcupine Flats. And we started having to paddle at night to make headway. These pictures don't illustrate that, but it got quite windy. And that's Deacon's Rock. And we also ran into a number of bears. This is one of the most beautiful bears I've ever seen on the Porcupine River. And here's a little footage of this bear that Jeremy named Snack Pack because he was after our food. There are some aggressive bears on the Porcupine River, we discovered. So we did, after paddling at night quite a bit, we did make it to Fort Yukon with lots of fantastic footage of this absolutely amazing country. And the refuge is just such a special place, and I really have to believe that if anyone were to spend time with the Gwich'in, if anyone were to spend time out on the land up there, that they would immediately see the value in protecting it. And I'm going to conclude with this one last shot of the porcupine caribou. And of course, there's a lot more work to be done to protect the refuge, so please follow the Alaska Wilderness League, follow the Gwich'in Steering Committee to stay up to date on what's going on. They both have great information on their websites. The Alaska Wilderness League has a fantastic article right now. Adam Colton wrote a piece about the pandemic and how it's affecting the oil industry's plans in the refuge, and that's on their site, and there's some just great information there. A lot of environmentally irresponsible decisions are being made right now, and we can't ignore that. But I'll try to end on a hopeful note. There is some good news concerning the refuge. More than a dozen large banks have said that they won't finance activity in the refuge, and that's huge. So that's really exciting. And if there is a silver lining to everything that's going on in the world right now, I think it's that, with everything closed, we're seeing less air pollution. The noise that disturbs whales, that interrupts their communication and hunting, has quieted. I think the humpback whales in southeastern Alaska are going to have the quietest season that they've had in decades, and endangered sea turtles are thriving in Florida. And I think, seeing these animals come back and thrive in places where they haven't felt safe in a long time is really exciting, because, we see that we can make changes, we can live in a way that's more sustainable and more respectful of the environment. And I think it's really important here to take the Gwich'in and the Inupiat as an example and see how they live with such respect, how they see the environment and take responsibility for it and care for our earth the way it cares for us and allows us to survive. And I want to thank the Alaska Wilderness League for having us all here this evening. I think one of the most incredible parts of working to protect the refuge is the community. And that was something I felt immediately when we got started in this work. There are millions of people across this country, around the world, who are standing with the Gwich'in Nation, and it's just been incredible being part of that community and learning from that community. All right, well, I'm gonna pass it back to the Alaska Wilderness League.
Thank you so much, Kristin. I cannot imagine a better way to kick off our Geography of Hope series than with your footage and words, as well as Bernadette's. I know that really was reinvigorating, and I found myself really smiling and taking it all in. So thank you very much for sharing that with our members and supporters. Before we get in a little bit more into kind of the banks, some of your questions about the current oil climate and what you can do to help, as well as I saw a number of film questions, I just wanted to quickly turn it over to Chris Konish, our Director of Development, to share a little bit about how you can get involved with our efforts.
Thanks, Monica. And Kristin and Bernadette, thank you so much for joining it and sharing this all with us. Kristin, you just touched on the fact that it's so important to have community at a time like this, and we are forging the sense of community. For us, it's great to see that we've had up to about 95 people joining this event, which is fantastic. We'd love for you to continue to get involved, and you do have a hand in this work. If you haven't already, the League launched a wonderful new grassroots toolkit that's on our website. There's a link right there. We'll also include it in the follow-up. That's going to provide you with any new immediate actions you can take online, as well as resources to take some offline actions, like writing letters to the editor, getting in touch with your members of Congress, and so forth. And I very much encourage you to check that out. I think Monica will also highlight a little bit later a specific action that we're looking for folks to sort of chime in on. Beyond that, there's a great need for financial resources at a time like this that allow groups like Alaska Wilderness League and the Gwich'in Steering Committee to be able to execute on a lot of the strategies we have in place to combat drilling in the Arctic Refuge. We very much would encourage you, if you have not already become a member of Alaska Wilderness League, or if you are, to consider making an additional gift at this time, or when you have an opportunity, as well as support the important work of the Gwich'in Steering Committee. You can find links there below, as well as encourage you to follow us on social media. We have a number of great images. You've obviously seen some great samples today. We're always looking to be able to spread that word out, and it's a different way to engage with our work. So thank you all so much for being a part of this. I will make sure that you can also get in touch with me if you ever have a question. But yeah, back over to you, Monica.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. And Lois, I just noticed, shared the current action that we have regarding how you can really step in and help our efforts. And first, I just wanted to quickly share that, as we mentioned, this is kicking off our Geography of Hope series, which means there are more to come. And we have a really exciting lineup, and we are adding more content every day. And so our next one is actually going to be next Tuesday, May 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to feature Caroline Van Hemert, who is an author and an adventurer and a biologist, who conducted a 4,000-mile journey across Alaska. She recently had a piece featured in the New York Times about her trip, as well as a piece featured in Vogue just this last week. So I'm very excited to bring her to all of you to share her experiences and perspectives. She is an Alaskan resident about what is facing some of our critical public lands in Alaska. The following week on Thursday, May 21st, again at 7 p.m., we're going to have Michael Boardman, who was an artist in residence in the Arctic Refuge in 2019 last year. It's a program that the Fish and Wildlife Service runs. So an interesting perspective from an artist who spent time on the coastal plain with ornithologists, helping record, track, and draw birds. And then we're also working with filmmaker Mark Titus, who recently finished a film called The Wild, which features Bristol Bay, the issues that are impacting that area, as well as the economy of fishing and tourism, and their efforts to make sure that their lands and waters are protected for their uses. So again, we will be sending all the links in our follow-up email, but I did just want to take a little time to plug those upcoming ones, as I think they're going to be really amazing opportunities and resources for those of you that are interested in learning different perspectives on these issues. And so while we have Bernadette, I did just want to jump in, and then we'll get back to more questions and with Kristin. But we did see a number come across regarding the current climate, price of oil, and what's going on and how that's going to impact leases. And so I wanted to flag that the one action that we are encouraging you to take today, that Lois shared in the chat, and again, we will have in the email, is to sign our petition urging Bank of America to update their policy and not fund resource extraction in the Arctic Refuge. And that comes on the heels, as you heard Kristin mention, the work that the coalition is doing in the corporate sector, which is in addition to the work we are doing in the legislative sector, is designed to push back and show that the public sentiment does not support drilling in the Arctic Refuge, and there will be repercussions for companies, banks, and insurance that pursue that angle. And so it's hopeful and extremely wonderful that we have had so many recently come out and with new policies that will not fund projects in the Arctic Refuge. And Bernadette has been meeting and conducting so many interviews with banks to share her story, the story of the Gwich'in, that have been critical to these policies. So Bernadette, I just wanted you, if you wanted to share a little bit about that work as well.
You mean the going to New York?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a little different going to New York than going to Washington, D.C. Because first off, I'm going into everything is concrete, and I'm used to land. And so you got to also understand, us as Gwich'in people, when we travel to the outside, it's like a culture shock also. When we took one of our elders, our elder had to go back to the hotel room at least 4 times a day because he said that it was so fast paced. So when we travel outside, it's really different for us. And when I went to New York, you know, going to these financial institutes, I kind of understood, and I already had a lot of experience. So, this greed that's happening, and this is exploding now, is it's unbelievable. But I also kept in mind that these people are people, and that reminding them that we are all, on this earth, and we have to coexist, and that respecting each other's ways of life. That is one of the main points that I made, is that, we respect the way you want to live. You want to live with a lot of concrete. We don't. And that's all we're asking, is for your support. And I told them that before their jobs, they're human beings, and they have a responsibility. And I feel that really helped a lot of them, because I think when you're disconnected from the land from water, from just what God gave to us for a long period of time, you start forgetting. So sometimes we just need reminding that, you know, we are all here, we all have our own spiritual path to take, and that we are all responsible. Every one of us, like as Gwich'in, my responsibility is the protection of the calving grounds, and my responsibility is to fight and protect the porcupine caribou herd. And we don't only do it for the Gwich'in people, we do it for all people. And that is what our elders directed us to: go out and tell the world that we are here, to do this in a good way, and not to compromise our position. That do it in a good way, that's a very simple sentence, but it's not always easy when we're up against so much dishonesty and misleading statements. But just to remember that these banks, you know, that they have mothers working there too. They have parents, they have grandparents, and I just kind of connected on that level. It was a little frustrating that we were talking to people in the banks that were already on our side, and we had to tell them, like, bring the people, we want to talk to the people that are actually encouraging development. So overall, I think that we came out, you know, with a good amount of support. That's not the end. We're still gonna go. We're still coming. We're still coming for them. We're still going after them. We're not going to give up. We're not going to stand aside. We're not going to allow people to come in here and make decisions about our future. And they're not involving us, and we're just not going to allow it. You know, enough. If you look across the country, Indigenous people are just being ignored, but we're also coming together. And that's why it is so important that we have people like you standing with us. And it does mean a lot, you know, like it really does. I look back at some of our messages, and I do want to just say thank you. And we keep you all in prayer. We are strong believers in the power of prayer. So also please just continue praying for us and praying for our animals, our state, and our homelands. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. And just to build a little bit, we did have a couple questions, as you mentioned, coming together and standing together. If you could share just a little bit of history on what the Gwich'in Gathering is, how it came about, I think that would be great. Thank you.
So the very first Gwich'in Gathering that was held in over 150 years was in 1988. And it was because of the threat to the calving grounds. Everybody knows the calving grounds as the Arctic Refuge, the 1002. To us, it's called Gwich'in Nation, the sacred place where life begins. And I'm raised as a Gwich'in. We are raised to protect this place, to honor and hold high regards to this area. And two of our elders from Old Crow, as you saw in some of the footage, you know, we were having people come into all of our different communities telling us we're going to be rich and we're going to have all this money. And so two of our elders from Old Crow, they called on this gathering, and they had it in Arctic Village, and that is where they founded the Gwich'in Steering Committee. There's 4 Canadian Gwich'in board members and 4 Alaskan Gwich'in board members. And every 2 years we come together to reaffirm our commitment to protect the Arctic Refuge. So even in 2017, when Trump's administration opened our sacred land to oil and gas development, in 2018, we still held the gathering in Segechik, Old Crow, Yukon Territory, Canada, Northwest Territory, sorry. And you know, the direction was to still move forward. And like I said, you know, this is our ways of life. This is like, we didn't go looking for this fight, it came to us. Yeah, we're not giving up. The fight is not over, it's just actually beginning. We need your support, we need your solidarity. We just ask that you continue to, you know, focus on these banks, focus on Congress, and share our story. You know, that's really important, is sharing our story. We speak for ourselves, and that's why I just appreciate everybody, especially Alaska Wilderness League, always allowing us to speak for ourselves, because nobody can tell our story but us. So I just, you know, thank you guys for that.
Thank you, Bernadette. And speaking of sharing the story, as Kristin mentioned earlier, before she started, her and Jeremy created this content and this media with the objective of helping organizations such as Alaska Wilderness League do just that and share the story of Bernadette and the Gwich'in and the Arctic Refuge as a whole. And so the film is free and available for you to view. We will, of course, include the link. I saw many of you commenting that you watched it before this and just thought it was wonderful. So that's great. It will be in the follow-up email. And so you can share that with your friends and your family and your network as a way to help expand those and share the story of what we are all working so hard for. But we did have some specific film questions, Kristin. And so people were wondering, when some of the first images with you, with your frosty eyelashes, they're wondering what month you were filming in, if you use drones and other equipment for capturing some of this footage.
Yeah, so we had started heading north from Arctic Village at the beginning of April, and it's still pretty chilly up north then. And let's see, we did use drones. A drone, we had to buy a few extra drone batteries, and luckily it worked the entire time. If it got below a certain temperature, we'd have to wait till later in the day so it were warmer outside, or the drone wouldn't work. And yeah, we used DSLR cameras. We tried to keep our kits as light as possible.
Awesome. And then can you share with the group what maybe you and Jeremy are working on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually working on another film about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge with the Northern Alaska Environmental Center. And the film, it's about pilot Don Ross. He flew in the refuge for many years, and he was recently gifted some footage from a Japanese photographer, Michio Hoshino, who spent a lot of time up on the coastal plains and who has some of the most amazing footage of the porcupine caribou herd that exists. So yeah, keep an eye out on the Northern Center's site, and some more information will be up about that film soon.
Awesome. That sounds really amazing. And for those of you who might not be familiar, the Northern Center is an Alaska-based group that we work closely with and support, and are amazing partners in not only the efforts around the refuge, but also many other efforts throughout the state of Alaska. So yes, be sure to keep an eye out, and I'm sure once we hear more, we will be sharing it with all of you. Just one more thing as we're kind of getting close to time before I wrap up. I have seen a number of questions specifically geared towards beyond signing the petition, what Bank of America cardholders can do. As it has also been pointed out, we are aware that for those of you in Alaska, especially with Alaska Airlines credit cards, those are managed by Bank of America. So the coalition is currently working on opportunities for us to better gather and reflect those Bank of America account holders and their sentiments regarding protecting the Arctic Refuge. We just recently were able, because the other banks have released statements saying that they will not be funding, been able to solely focus on Bank of America in its entirety. We had earlier, our corporate committee was focused on the top 6 banks throughout the United States. So being able to be very focused right now will be helpful. So I will say stay tuned beyond signing the petition for additional opportunities as we learn what will be most effective in helping to move their needle towards joining their colleagues and releasing a statement supporting funding Arctic Refuge projects. And so with that, I would just like to thank you all again for joining. I'm increasingly encouraged by all your participation in our webinars and with your questions and support for our work and for lending your voice and your financial support so that we can continue to not only put on projects like these, but also support our many partners across the country in their efforts. And so with that, I say, please feel free to reach out to any of us here at Alaska Wilderness League if you ever have any questions or would like to know more about how you can get involved. And please stay tuned to your email, probably coming tomorrow, with a link to this full recording that you can share, as well as the film, action items, and donation opportunities. So thank you again, Bernadette. Thank you again, Kristin. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, all May 12th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Bye.